Open invitation. A short story by H.B. FYFE. As Olodogal waddled into the section communications chamber on Yaradir, second planet of Zillar, two of his four walking tentacles stuck slightly on a nearly dry spot. Fire and dry sand. He swore at the technicians. Can't you two even keep the footing decently moist? Without waiting for an answer, he made his way to the row of shallow mud tubs before the television screen. The operators aimed eye stalks at each other. Finally, Yado Nalmaz, as junior, rose and went to the wall controls of the conditioner. The assistant supervisor was relieved to see a thin sheet of water creep across the floor. He never knew when Yado or Viri Nalrin might choose to ignore him. Which comes of old Anu loading this section with his nephews, he thought bitterly, forgetting that in his own office he already had a list of his own relatives prepared against the day when he should succeed to the post of supervisor of colonial scouting for Sector 63. The slap of tentacles in the corridor announced the arrival of his superior. Anu Naliev entered and lowered his thick body into the choicest of the mud tubs, which Olo had prudently left free. "Now, what's this urgent message?" he demanded, pointing one eye stalk at Olo and fixing the other upon the screen above Viri's broad, bony head. "A request for orders from Scouts Oylar Tull," answered Viri. "Assigned to, let me see, System LL 255-13. "Did we have any report on that system?" asked Enyo. Yado produced the tape of a preliminary report and placed it on the speaker. The list of facts rolled out: number of planets, number with sufficient water for colonization, number of intelligent species, 1, on third planet, native nomenclature, star, Sol, own planet, Earth, others, and so on. "All right," wheezed Enyo. "I remember now. Get hold of, what's his name, Zoya?" Viri manipulated his keys and knobs. The brief delay before an answering image appeared on the screen irritated Enyo. The loose, coppery scales around his thick neck glinted with iridescent highlights as he puffed out his air sacs. "Desiccation," he snarled. "We bridge all those light years with subspace waves for his benefit, and he can't be alert enough to, got him now, Viri?" The technician snapped the tip of a gripping tentacle in assent. Another Yaradurian looked out at them from the screen. This one had obviously been roughing it. His scales were lubricated by only a minimum film of moisture, and he wore space harness on the lower part of his body. To keep his walking tentacles wet, Olo realized. He hasn't so much as a drop of water on the floor of that dive. "Zoilar Tull," announced Viri. "Stated simply," said Anu bluntly, "what is your trouble?" "Stated simply, Great One," answered the scout, "I am in imminent danger of detection by natives of this system." Olo stiffened in his mud tub. He heard the slurp as the supervisor splashed more mud upon the oozing floor. "How is that?" demanded Anu, his throat again beginning to expand majestically. "I fail to see," replied Zoya, "in what manner I could have avoided it, Great One. The natives, Earthmen in their own speech, have just discovered an inefficient form of our own interstellar subspace drive. They have gone exploring." Might have known it, thought Olo. Just when I'm working up to a top rank, too. It sounded bad. Should they be unable to think Zoya out of his predicament, it might well mean new personnel all around. Olo's only satisfaction was that Enyu's relatives would be discharged before his own resignation was given him to sign. Enyu controlled himself. "Give me a picture of your situation," he commanded. "To begin with, Great One, I chose to study the natives from a distance, as is usual. I left my subspace ship on the largest satellite of their sixth planet, which has several other moons and a beautiful set of rings that—" "Kindly touch bottom." Enyu cut him off. "I am not interested in a local travelogue." "Even so, Great One. With my short-range rocket, I then established this base on the seventh moon of their fifth planet. Only this moon's smallness and insignificance has so far prevented my discovery." They listened to the rest of the story in an uncomfortable silence that was broken only by an occasional squishing of mud as one or another stirred uneasily. Zoya Lartel had observed the Earthmen, as well as other bodies in the system, for a quarter revolution of his chosen fifth planet. At the time of his arrival, the natives had reached their own satellite, but he judged that they would be long in organizing successful flights to the planets. I translated some of their broadcasts and learned that this was their great current project. Naturally, however, I was unconcerned, and contented myself with obtaining specimens for my researches by brief, discreet trips here and there. Ullo snapped his tentacle tip quietly in assent. He remembered from his history the dreadfully long period of his own race's expansion throughout the system of Ziller. These Earthmen, however, seemed from Zoya's report to possess certain advantages. Their requirements of air and water were moderate and more easily stored in a space vessel. If they had discovered a form of subspace drive, they might be energetic enough to pop up in the vicinity of Ziller some fine day. You will imagine my amazement, continued Zoya, when I heard one of their broadcasts announce that a ship had reached their fourth planet, and another the second. Anu blew out a long, bubbling breath. All this is doubtless interesting, he snorted, but what is the immediate emergency? The image of Zoya aimed both eye stalks rather deliberately at the supervisor. They reached and passed this group of satellites, he hissed out. Do I make clear my dilemma, Great One? He waited while Anu's neck swelled dangerously. Just before the explosion, he continued. Should they discover me, they will also find the specimens I have collected, except the choicer ones stored on my subspace vessel for transport home. This is what I mean. Zoya reached out to touch a button, and the scene changed to what was evidently the dissecting laboratory of his base. Behind a transparent bulkhead hung several sorts of carcasses in various stages of dismemberment. Ullo suspected that the storeroom was simply left at the temperature of the moon's surface. Very well, exclaimed Anu as the scout reappeared. You seem to be operating a sort of butcher shop with some of the most ugly specimens ever seen. What about it? Ullo felt sorry for the scout. Even he, indeed, as he saw by the twitch of their eye stalks, even the technicians, had realized the problem. Zoya patiently explained, forbearing to mention that his instructions were laid out by Anu. If you will refer to descriptions in my preliminary report, Great One, you will see that certain of the specimens are Earthmen themselves. Should their explorers discover them, I have reason to believe they would be resentful. It is my opinion that they are a belligerent race. Anu was silent for a moment. Well, yes, that is possible, he admitted. It would appear, he continued in another moment, that you must either abandon your base or dispose of your specimens if, as you say, the Earthmen have so soon reached your vicinity. Zoya waited. Ullo stirred in his tub. If I may suggest, Great One? Yes? I believe he should destroy his subspace ship. What? I am inclined to agree, Zoya Lartel put in. Amazed, Anu waited for Ullo's reasons. Encouraged by such consideration, the latter went on. If these Earthmen are already on their way to the ringed planet, they will undoubtedly stop first at the largest moon, where Zoya has left his main ship. And will likely discover it there, Anu agreed reluctantly. And from that point, continued Ullo, they will discover both our location in space and the interstellar subspace drive in its finished form. After that, they can get at us. The opposite extreme of my dilemma, confirmed Zoya. Silence. Ordered Anu. Let me think. All of them, supervisor, assistant, technicians, and the image on the screen, considered the situation gloomily. The government of Yaradir would take a dry view of having to combat an invasion, should one develop from this. The race of Yaradir, because of their personal requirements and life conditions, were not as numerous as most of the races they had found in their explorations. The great distances between their colonies and the growing number of these were due to the comparative rarity of the type of planet that suited them. Can you reach the ship in your local rocket in time to escape in it? Asked Enyo. After all, subspace ships are costly. If we leave a deserted base, what can they find out? It is possible, admitted Zoya doubtfully, but risky. What do you mean? They may intercept me on the way, for their ships are faster than my rocket. They may even catch the big ship before I gain enough speed to shift into subspace drive. For all we know, interrupted Olo, forgetting his place, they may be able to keep up with you even then. Anu bubbled angrily at the idea, but they all were silent for another unhappy period of cogitation. Perhaps, admitted Anu in the end, you will have to destroy the subspace ship, but only in the last extremity. I could blow it up from space, if I get within range. Not so fast, that ship is a major item in the budget. Anu told him angrily. The first thing is to try to get aboard unseen and return to pick up what you can from your base. And if these Earthmen are nearby? Olo asked. Then Zoya must forget the base and escape with the ship, which is the main thing. But if they have already found it? Inquired Zoya. All right. Then destroy it. And you had better start immediately unless you wish to find such action necessary. Somehow, here one eye stalk was deflected rather pointedly toward Olo. Somehow, too many mouths always speed up the clocks. Olo did a little neck swelling himself at this example of bias. Just because he couldn't get my job for his youngest brother, he thought resentfully. Serve him right if I'd resigned. Where'd he be if I didn't stick here to push his snout into the obvious every time he slides over it? Yes, repeated Anu, complacent at having found his solution, that is what you must do. If anything goes wrong, you can still use your rocket to return to your base. Which I hope, sighed Zoya, to find undisturbed. At that, Anu fell silent. After a tense moment, he heaved himself around to direct both eye stalks at Olo. Well? He wheezed. Have you no suggestions in case he does have to destroy the subspace ship? Olo twirled one tentacle tip in the mud of his tub until he collected a sticky blob. This he flipped away with a snap of the tentacle. He derived a slight satisfaction from the splat against the far wall. We must try to preserve one of his collections of information, he said. It would entail considerable expense, not to mention time, to replace Zoya and repeat the scouting. Anu shifted his position irritably. Olo saw that his reference to expense had been a shrewd blow. The supervisor snorted and bubbled, but finally conceded that much and gestured for Olo to continue. So it would be unfortunate if he should succeed in regaining his big ship, only to return to his base and find it occupied by exploring Earthmen. What do you suggest, then? He should try for either the base or the ship, and arrange to destroy the other. If he can remain undetected for a short time at the base, he can dispose of his specimens after forwarding a report on them. If he gets to the ship safely, why leave behind any clues at all? After considerable wheezing and puffing, it was agreed that Zoya should take a chance on having his base discovered while he was away, but provide for the eventuality by arranging a bomb that would be set off by the approach of any strange ship. He admitted that he already had one, keyed to be safe only after certain signals from his own rocket. He had only to hook it up. If you do have to return, advised Olo, clean out your dissecting room and then make friends with the Earthmen. Give them some story of being cast away, and ask help in building a new ship. You mean, install our kind of drive without their knowing? Exactly. Said Anu, taking to the idea. Then just drop out of sight some fine day and leave them wondering which way you went. At this point, Viri made bold to request that Zoya leave the televisor at the base operating, with a continuous view of the main chamber as now shown. He began to explain that he wanted to be sure not to lose contact, but Anu had heard enough. He cut Viri short by climbing out of his mud tub. That settles it then, he summed up to Zoya. If you are forced to destroy the subspace ship, report from the base when you return and are ready to contact the natives. Otherwise, report from the ship. He waddled out of the communications chamber without ceremony, followed by Olo Dogao. The next day, the latter was kept busy with the many reports of arid planets he had to file in order to justify the expenses of exploration. He always leaves explaining the budget to me, he thought. He did, however, snatch time to put a copy tape of the last installment of Zoya's preliminary report on the speaker, having felt ill at ease for not being completely up to date at the previous evening's conference. Halfway through a listing of sociological and psychological observations, Olo stiffened. He ran the tape through again. He'd better get to that ship. He wheezed to himself. They sound like a nest of troublemakers, resourceful, aggressive, just the sort to burst into this system some sweet day and tell us Yaradir is their colony. He ripped the tape out of the speaker and hurried along a dank corridor to Anu's office, not even pausing at his favorite spots to rub against the cool, dripping walls. He found his chief relaxing in an adjoining chamber by submitting to a massage. "Not now," complained Anu at the first mention of Earthmen. "Wait till we hear from Zoya. I want to enjoy having my scales oiled in peace." Olo spitefully dropped the tape into a pot of scale grease on the way out, but dutifully returned to his work. Late one night, however, he was reminded of the scout in system LL-255-13. The emergency buzzer beside his sleeping pool awoke him with an urgent summons. The number on the screen beside it indicated the communications chamber now reserved for Zoya Lartul. Still dripping, Olo pumped down the corridor, encountering his chief at the last turn. Anu was irritated. "What can they have spoiled now?" he demanded, as if he suspected Olo of having had a tentacle in it. It was a perfectly simple arrangement. "Perhaps something unexpected came up," suggested Olo. "What could be unexpected?" "It was utterly simple," said Anu explosively. "If he beats them to it, he reports from the ship. Otherwise he destroys it and goes back to report from his base." He slapped irately into their destination, wondering audibly why he had to come down here and direct people's eye stalks for them. "Because, Great One," replied Veery Nalrin, a trifle more abruptly than was consistent with proper respect for Anu's position, "the televisor at Zoya's base has gone dead." "What? Why? If you can't keep in communication." "There isn't any communication," interrupted Veery. Olo saw that the operator was deeply disturbed. To interrupt, actually interrupt, Anu Naliev. Even if one was his nephew. "That is why, if you will remember," Veery went on, "I insisted Zoya leave his signal in operation. The chance that his base would be approached by a strange ship sooner than we hoped, and blow up." "So the bomb went off?" said Olo. "It must have. And, by the figures Zoya gave me before he left, he is long overdue at the subspace ship." "Well, what of it?" demanded Anu. "It merely means he will have to report from the ship when if they don't." He snorted and wheezed into silence. Olo traded stares with Veery. Then he looked at Yado, who wore an equally unhappy expression on his wide visage. "Are you sure he would have reached the ship before now?" Anu demanded. "Completely." The supervisor swore feelingly, using some of the bleakest and driest terms Olo had ever heard. The gist of the diatribe was the delay and expense. "Now it may be years before we get his data." "How do you mean?" asked Olo. "It's obvious, isn't it? He must have had to destroy the ship, but before he got back, some prowling Earthman set off the charge at his base. That leaves him with only his rocket. Don't you see what it means?" "Perhaps not," said Olo. "Why, he'll have to make friends with those things from Earth, and get help building a new ship. Until then, we'll have to classify his report pending." He sloshed watery mud about as he heaved himself from his tub impatiently. Olo aimed an eye stalk at each of the technicians, keeping them silent until Anu had waddled indignantly from the room. "I knew we didn't cover all the alternatives that night," said Olo feelingly. "How could we be so dry inside the skull? How could we?" "He certainly doesn't like the delay," commented Yado. Delay. Snorted Alo. Then he asked, is that what it means to you, too? Viri and Yado fidgeted under his stare. I keep wondering if Zoya reached the ship, Alo. They stared at him. Say it this way, then, if Zoya reached the ship? Viri sighed. I suppose we may never find out what really happened, he said. I believe I would really rather not, Alo told them, preparing to leave. Listen into a complete copy of the preliminary reports Oya sent, and you will see what I mean. His scales were too dry and needed an oiling, he told himself, but he knew it was more than that which sent the shudder through him. And there were billions of them. What shall we do? Asked Viri. I don't know what good it will do, said Olo, pausing in the doorway, but you might make your wills. Personally, I intend to apply for transfer to some colony lying in the opposite direction from this Saul. Record of us, and a ship to reach us, we might as well have sent them an invitation. He remembered their unhappy eyes 2 years later, when the regular bulletin tapes sent out to the colonies reported unused dismissal. Olo applied for a post at a more distant colony. After 1 Yara at the new post, the monthly tapes from Yaradir were interrupted. Everybody complained about the service. Everybody but Olo. He commandeered a subspace ship, and moved on. But not far enough.